The Spelling heiress traded a $165 million mansion for a cramped motorhome parked on a public beach. Tori Spelling's fall from grace defies every rule of Hollywood wealth. Most trust fund children grow richer over time, but the daughter of the most powerful television producer in history somehow ended up with a bank account drained by the government. Why did a father with $500 million leave a beloved daughter only a tiny fraction of the family fortune? How does a person go from a home larger than the White House to a $100 a night motel? Do hidden secrets explain the transformation of the Princess of Beverly Hills into a nomadic debtor? The story of the Spelling fortune doesn't start in Hollywood. It starts in a tailor shop in Dallas, Texas. Aaron Spelling was the son of Jewish immigrants, Dave and Pearl Spelling. His father, Dave, was a tailor who had moved to America from Poland and changed his name from Sperling to Spelling. Life was not easy for the early Spellings. In fact, it was quite dangerous. Aaron's mother, Pearl, had a first husband who was actually stabbed to death by a stranger in Dallas back in 1911. This family knew struggle, and they knew what it was like to have nothing. Aaron grew up as a small, thin kid who was often bullied, but he had a secret weapon: his imagination. After serving in the military and trying his hand at acting, Aaron realized the real power was in the writing and the producing. He moved to Los Angeles with only a few dollars in his pocket, but he eventually became the most prolific television producer in the history of the world. By the 1970s and 80s, Aaron Spelling wasn't just making TV, he was defining American culture. He was the man behind The Love Boat, Charlie's Angels, Dynasty, and Fantasy Island. He had a Midas touch. Every show he touched turned into a massive hit, and with those hits came more money than most people can even comprehend. But as his bank account grew, so did the walls of the world he was building for his children, Tori and Randy. He wanted to give them the life he never had, but in doing so, he might have accidentally set the stage for one of the most public financial collapses in history. In 1988, Aaron and his wife, Candy, decided they needed a home that reflected their status as Hollywood royalty. They bought the old Bing Crosby estate in Holmby Hills, tore it down, and built a 56,500 square foot French chateau-style mansion that they nicknamed the Manor. Let me tell you this house wasn't just big, it was bigger than the White House. It was larger than the Taj Mahal. To give you some perspective, if you took a standard American home, you would have to stack about 25 of them together just to match the size of the Spelling Manor. But it gets crazier. The house didn't just have normal rooms, it had theme rooms. There was a room specifically designed to house Candy Spelling's massive collection of antique dolls. There was a room with humidity control just to store silver so it wouldn't tarnish. There was even a Prince Charles suite, which was a guest wing named after the Prince of Wales stayed there. For a young Tori Spelling, this was her normal. She grew up with a barbershop in her basement and a bowling alley just a few steps from her bedroom. She lived in a world where she never had to see a price tag and where every whim was catered to by a massive staff of workers. And here, where it gets wild, her father even planned to build a private petting zoo on the property just for her, although he eventually decided against it because she was already 17 by the time the house was finished. As Tori reached her teenage years, she wanted to follow in her father's footsteps and enter the world of acting. She started with small guest spots on her father's shows like The Love Boat and Fantasy Island. But her big break came in 1990 when her father was developing a new show called Beverly Hills 90210. There is a famous story that Tori auditioned for the role of Donna Martin using a fake name, Tori Snelling, because she wanted to prove she could get the part on her own merit. She actually believed that the producers didn't know she was the boss's daughter. But let's be real, she looked exactly like her father's twin, and everyone in the room knew exactly who she was. Tori became a superstar as Donna Martin. For 10 years, she was a fixture on one of the most popular shows in the world. But behind the scenes, things weren't as perfect as they seemed on screen. While she was making her own money, she was also being bullied by the early internet. Trolls would call her frog and bug-eyed, which deeply hurt her self-confidence. She would often cry in the makeup chair before filming. This led her to undergo plastic surgery, including a nose job at the age of 16, which her own mother allegedly encouraged by telling her she'd be pretty once her nose was fixed. Even with all the money in the world, Tori was struggling with deep-seated insecurities that would later fuel her need to spend and overcompensate. As 90,210 came to an end in 2000, Tori was a woman in her late 20s who had never lived a life outside the Spelling bubble. In 2004, she married Charlie Shanian, an actor and writer, in a wedding that cost over $1 million. But the marriage was a mistake from the start. Tori would later admit that she didn't really love him. Just a year later, she was sent to Ottawa, Canada, to film a TV movie called Mind Over Murder. That is where she met Dean McDermott. Dean was a Canadian actor who was also married at the time to Mary Jo Eustace. According to Tori's own memoir, the two of them had an affair the very night they met. She claimed there were fireworks and that she had no regrets about the infidelity. It was a whirlwind romance that moved at a dangerous speed. She divorced Charlie, Dean divorced Mary Jo, and they were married in Fiji in May 2006. But this happiness was overshadowed by a massive tragedy. Just 1 month after their wedding, Tori Spelling passed away at the age of 83. Everyone expected Tori to inherit a fortune. Her father's estate was worth at least $500 million. Many people thought she would never have to work another day in her life. But when the will was read, the world was stunned. Tori and her brother Randy were left only $800,000 each. To a normal person, $800,000 is a lot of money. But to someone who grew up in the Spelling manor, it was practically nothing. It represented less than 1/5% of the family fortune. The rest of the money, hundreds of millions of dollars, went to her mother, Candy. Why would a father who loved his daughter leave her so little? Candy Spelling later said it was because Tori had a shopping addiction that was completely out of control. She claimed Tori would walk into a store and spend $60 in a single afternoon. But there was also the issue of the no contest clause. Aaron had included a rule in his will that if Tori or Randy tried to sue for more money and lost, they would lose their entire inheritance. This effectively silenced them. Tori was trapped. She had the fame of a Spelling, but the bank account of a struggling actress, and she had a new husband who wasn't exactly a high earner himself. With her inheritance quickly disappearing, Tori turned to the only thing she knew, reality television. In 2007, she and Dean launched Tori and Dean, In Love on the Oxygen Network. The show followed them as they supposedly used Tori's inheritance to buy and run a bed and breakfast called Chateau La Rue. But let me tell you this, the reality was mostly fake. It was later revealed that they didn't actually own the B&B, they were just leasing it with an option to buy. They were playing the roles of entrepreneurs for the cameras, but the business wasn't sustainable. As the years went by, Tori tried to launch several other businesses. She had a children's clothing line called Little Maven, a jewelry line called Styled by Tori, and an antique store called Inventory. But none of them lasted. Little Maven failed when her partner company went bankrupt. The antique store was mostly a way for her to sell off the massive amounts of stuff she had collected over years of shopping. She was a borderline hoarder who couldn't stop buying things even as her income began to dry up. She was trying to maintain a silver spoon lifestyle on a plastic budget, and it was only a matter of time before the credit cards started to decline. By 2016, the situation moved from Hollywood struggle to legal nightmare. American Express sued Tori for nearly $38,000 in unpaid bills. Then they sued her again for another $87,000. But the biggest blow came from the government. The IRS and the state of California revealed that Tori and Dean owed a staggering amount of back taxes. By the time their divorce was finalized in 2025, the total debt was over $1.7 million. And here where it gets wild. In 2017, the IRS actually drained their bank accounts to pay off a $707,000 tax lien. Imagine waking up and finding out that every penny you have has been seized by the government. At the same time, Dean was being threatened with jail because he couldn't pay child support to his ex-wife. They were living in a constant state of financial crisis, yet they were still renting houses in Calabasas and Hidden Hills that cost $12,000 to $15,000 a month. They were stuck in a cycle of high-speed spending and high-speed debt, and the walls were finally closing in. In 2023, the story took its most bizarre turn yet. Tori revealed on Instagram that her family was being forced to leave their rental home because of a severe black mold infestation. She claimed the mold had been slowly killing her 5 children for 3 years. Her kids were constantly sick with respiratory infections, skin rashes, and extreme fevers. Her daughter Stella was even hospitalized with migraines that affected her ability to speak. But because they had no money and a terrible credit score, they couldn't just rent another luxury house. They were spotted staying in a $100 a night motel, which is a massive step down for someone who grew up in a 123-room manor. And then, things got even more desperate. Photos surfaced of Tori and her 5 children living out of a Sunseeker E450 RV parked at a campground in Ventura, California. They were seen sitting in camping chairs, cooking on a small stove, and drying their clothes on a folding rack outside the vehicle. It was a shocking image that went viral around the world. The girl who once had everything was now living like a nomad. Today, the truth of Tori Spelling is a complicated mix of tragedy and stubbornness. She and Dean have officially separated after 18 years of marriage. Their divorce judgment has left them both responsible for hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt that they may never be able to pay back. Tori is currently living in another expensive rental in Calabasas, trying to keep up appearances while her financial foundation is essentially non-existent. She remains estranged from her mother, Candy, who still controls the $500 million Spelling fortune. While Candy has reportedly set up trust funds for the grandchildren, she has refused to pay off Tori's massive credit card debts. Tori is a woman who was raised to be a princess, but was never taught how to be a person. She was given the world, but she was never given a map on how to keep it. As she continues to navigate the wreckage of her family's empire, one thing is clear. The Spelling name might still carry weight in Hollywood, but in the real world, the bills always come due. Ultimately, the story of Tori Spelling is not just about a celebrity who spent too much money. It is a story about the psychological impact of extreme wealth. When you grow up in a house that is essentially a palace, the concept of enough doesn't exist. Tori once said that it's hard to go from silver spoon to plastic, and she was right. She spent her life trying to recreate the magic of her childhood manor, but she didn't have her father's billion-dollar television network to fund it. She is now 50 years old, raising 5 children in the middle of a financial storm that shows no signs of clearing. She has gone from the highest peaks of Hollywood to the lowest valleys of debt and displacement. The girl who lived in Candyland is now facing a very harsh reality, and the truth is that no amount of fame can protect you from the consequences of a life lived beyond your means. Whether she can ever reconcile with her mother and reclaim a portion of the family fortune remains to be seen. But for now, Tori Spelling is a living reminder that the bigger the house, the harder the fall.